Hey guys, and welcome back to a new video. In this video, I will show you how you can build an animated splash screen on Android with the official splash screen API. And in this example, it will look like this. Let me show you. If we launch the app, then you can see my logo rotates, scales up, and then finally it scales down and we see our app. So those are the types of animations you can actually build with this official splash screen API from Google. So just these simple transformations like scaling, translating, transforming in any type of way, rotating as I showed you. If you want a completely custom splash screen with a very custom animation, which goes beyond animating inside of this little circle where the logo is, you can see there's actually a circle around this logo where Android will just crop everything. So even if you move the logo to the top, it would be cut off. So if you want a very custom splash screen, then that is only possible by having a separate screen in your app. That is not what I will show you because that's very tricky. That doesn't work with the official splash screen API. And you have to take a lot of care that you don't accidentally end up with two splash screens because you can't really disable the official API, but rather just make it invisible. But let's dive into an empty Android Studio Jetpack Compose project here. And the only thing I've already added is the dependency for the splash screen. So in your build.gradle app file, make sure you have this implementation block here for the core splash screen API. The next step is then to actually import your logo. So whatever you want to appear on the splash screen, we need to now go to Ras, Drawable, right-click New, and want to import a vector asset. Then in my case, I want to use a custom file, so my custom logo. You could of course also use some kind of graphic that is already here part of Android Studio, but usually that's not what you want. You want your app's logo. So we click on local file, SVG or PSD. We then open our Finder. Then I actually drag in my logo here. You can see, I'll just navigate to the path where your logo is, your SVG version of the logo. We open this, there we go. Make sure that this is actually a square format. So even though my logo isn't exactly squared, as you can see, make sure that the drawing area of your SVG is actually still a square. So just add some white space with some vector graphic program if you don't have a perfect square as a logo, because otherwise Android Studio will just try to make it a square and then it will distort the logo. And I haven't found a way around that. So even though if you set the correct dimensions in an Android Studio, it might distort it if it's not a square. We can then select a size. I don't think that actually matters here, but I will just choose something like 50 dp. We click Next, Finish. There we go. Here's our logo. You can also see it here. And each vector graphic in XML consists of such a vector file. A vector file consists of paths of any type of shape. And you can see the path data just describes how that path looks like. So basically how this shape or all the different individual shapes of this logo look like. And these you can of course also animate. So you can animate all these paths here individually. If you just want to rotate the top left shape here, then you can also do that by just doing what I show you now. We want to animate this whole thing, so all paths in total. And for that, we need to add a path group. So we just want to take all these paths and wrap them into such a group. Like this, we can then select all these, move them in the group, and then we can animate this group as a whole. If you want to animate all these paths individually, then you don't need this group. Then you rather need to add the info that I want to add to this group to each path individually. What is the info that we need to add here? Whoops, not that one. Actually, I want to go into the next line. On the one hand, most importantly, the name. Because that will be the name how we also reference the animation and the shapes that we want to animate later on when we define another XML file where we define what kind of animation we have. So here we can call this animation group, for example. We also want to set the pivot X and pivot Y. So the pivot is just the coordinate around which we rotate, around which we scale. So we just want to make sure that it's not in the top left like it is by default, but rather in the center of the logo so that it really scales up and also rotates around the center of the logo. So pivot X, what do we choose here? Well, we need to take a look at the viewport width and viewport height, and then just select whatever is in the middle of that. So just 3,500 divided by 2, then we land at 1,750. Same for the Y coordinate. And then we make sure that the pivot is in the middle. You can also verify this by adding a little bit of rotation, for example, 90 degrees. Then you can see the logo is rotated around, is rotated by 90 degrees around its center. We don't want to leave it like that. We just want to leave it like this instead. And that is already it for this logo XML file. So that is just a very normal drawable. But if we now want to really animate that, then we're not fine with just a normal drawable. No, we need an animated vector drawable. So that is just an additional drawable file that we have in our drawable folder. And for that animated vector drawable, we need an object animator. So that's an additional XML file where we just define what kind of animation we really want to have. And we do that in our RAS folder, right-clicking new Android resource file. And for the resource type, I want to select animator. And the name should be logo_animator. Like this, the root element should not be a set, but rather an object animator. And we can then click OK to create that. You can see that is a very blank object animator. On the one hand, this is the place we want to set the duration for the animation that we want to play. I will just set this to 1 second, for example. And we can also optionally set an interpolator here. So how the animation is played over time, so the animation speed over time. I will show you that as well, but not at this point, but rather at the end of this video. And here inside of this object animator block, we can open a so-called property values holder. That is an XML block where you can on the one hand define the property name. So the property really refers to the XML property, what we want to animate. So for example, the rotation, the scale X, scale Y, that is what the property name refers to. So here for the first property name, that should be the rotation. We want to animate the rotation with this values holder. We then need to specify a value type. So what we're dealing with here, for the rotation, we're working with degrees, and those are specified as a float. So something between 0 and 360 degrees. And then we need to specify the value from. So from which degrees we want to rotate to which. We want to rotate from 0.0 degrees to 360 degrees. So just one full rotation. And that is how we define our rotation animation. We can now copy this, since we also want to scale up the logo. Copy this twice, or paste this twice rather, because scale is separated into scale X. On the one hand, it's also a float. Once you animate from a scale of 0, so completely invisible, to something like 0.4 in this case. This is a little bit dependent on your graphic. I just found out this value by experimenting. If I chose 1.0 here for the scale, then it was always too large. It was cropped, but 0.4 is perfect. And we can then again, let's just copy paste this again, since only this X needs to be replaced with Y. So that way we completely animate the scale and the rotation when we apply this object animator. How do we apply this? Well, for that, we need an animated vector drawable, as I said. We can create this in our drawable folder by right-clicking new drawable resource file. File name could be animated logo, and the root element should be an animated vector, like this. And here we immediately get an error because this animated vector does not currently have this record attribute drawable. So of course need to specify which real drawable, which non-animated drawable this animated drawable uses. And that is our normal logo. So add drawable logo, then the error is gone. You can also see it on the left. And we need to specify a target. So the target is now the name of our group. So we take a look at our logo again. This group is what we want to animate of that logo. We gave it the name animation group, so that is also our target. Back in here, we paste that for the name, animation group, and the animation is our logo animator. And then we can also see this on the right side here. We should also be able to try this out by clicking play, but this seems very buggy. I'm not sure why that doesn't work, but later on in our splash screen, it will work. Okay, so far so good. That is how we define the animation. But what we did not yet do is to set up our splash screen. So the official splash screen API from Android, the big benefit of that is that it does not need a separate screen. And it really uses the initial screen that really shows up while your activity is being loaded. So you might know that if you boot up an Android app, then there's always a little white screen for a moment. That can be replaced with the splash screen API, and you can use an animation for that. That is pretty cool, but we of course need to set it up that way. We can do so by going to our values folder, themes, and here we need to define a separate theme. And that theme should only count for our splash screen. After the splash screen, it will be replaced with our real application theme, which is already defined here. So we can define a style called theme.app.starting, for example. So it's really our starting theme. The parent of the theme is our splash screen, so theme.splash screen. And then in here, we can configure our splash screen and how it looks like. On the one hand, the window splash screen background, that is our background color of our splash screen. I'll just choose black here, since that color is already defined, but you can also choose anything you like. Then we also need to define a post-splash screen theme, which is the theme that is going to be applied after the splash screen has been shown. As I said, that will be our animated splash screen theme, so whatever is defined up here. And last but not least, we want an animated, Android Windows splash screen animated icon. This is now the icon that we're going to apply the animated vector drawable, which we can pass here. So our animated logo in this case. We do get an error here because animated logos for the splash screen API are only supported from API level 31 up, and current min is 24. We can bypass this by overriding the resource in values v31 so that we only apply this property for versions above, for versions starting from 31. Let's do this. Then it will be moved out of here. And if we take a look in values, we see that we now have two themes files. This one here will only be applied for versions starting from 31, and this one here for all the remaining ones. So here we can also remove this again. Now what we need to make sure is that our app really also starts in this starting theme. We can do so in the manifest. Let's go to manifests. On the one hand, in our application tag, there is this theme attribute, which is currently set to our initial theme, but we want to set this to our starting theme. And the same should be the case for our initial activity right here. Also set this to starting. And this will then automatically be replaced with the normal theme thanks to this post splash screen theme attribute. Okay, in our main activity, the last thing we need to do in order to make our splash screen work is to add this install splash screen function. This needs to be called before set content, so make sure you call it before, also before set content view if you're using XML. And then by using apply, we can configure this splash screen further here. So something you might want to do is you need to check something during that splash screen. For example, you want to check if the token of the user is still valid, if the user is still logged in, then that is something the view model might check. The view model might make a network call while that splash screen is showing. And it should also show while that view model is checking that. So let's just have a little sample view model here in our root package, new file, call it main view model, for example, and then make that inherit from view model. We have a normal, let's just have a state flow here, is ready, mutable state flow, which is initially false. Initially, we're not ready, of course. And then we expose the public immutable state flow and setting that to isReady.as state flow. And then in the view model's init block, when it is created, we can launch a coroutine to simulate the delay. So here we can delay this for, let's say, 3 seconds. And after that, we set isReady to true. So that means here, this would be the place where you check maybe if the user is still authenticated, where you have some kind of asynchronous function. And after that, you decide if it's now ready or not. And as soon as that gets set to true, we now want to hide the splash screen and show the real app. We can do that by going to our main activity. And inside of this apply block, we set the keep on screen condition. This is just a normal lambda. And here we need to return a Boolean that gets checked on every single frame draw. And as long as that Boolean is false, the splash screen will still be shown. So here, what we want to pass is, first of all, we need a view model reference, private val view model by view models. and that is a main view model. Inside here, we now want to say exclamation mark view model is ready.value. So this Lambda will check the value of the state flow after every frame, and while that value is false, then this will be negated. And if this value is true, I think I said it the wrong way before, but if this value here is true, then the splash screen will still be shown. As soon as is ready is being set to true, so we are ready, then it will be negated again, so that will be set to false, and we will get out of the splash screen. And if we now try this out, then you can see there's our animation, and after 3 seconds, we do see our real app. That is looking fine so far. But there are 2 more things that I want to show you. On the one hand, I want to show you how you can assign an interpolator. So what I really like about animations is, for example, an overshoot interpolator, which just animates a little bit beyond the value that we initially wanted. And I also want to show you how you could animate this icon out of the splash screen. So after the splash screen has been shown, we just want to shrink it down again. So we want to just scale it down so we show that the app is now starting. That currently does not happen. If you take a look again, it animates in, but then the splash screen just disappears and nothing happens with the logo. And that can also be done here in this apply block by having this set on exit animation listener, where we get a reference to the splash screen provider, which we can call screen, for example. And here we can just define custom animations in good old XML fashion. So since we want to zoom out the icon, we can say we have a zoom X animation, which is an object animator of float. So I want to animate a float value. First of all, the target, so just the view that we want to animate, we can get this with the screen.icon view. So I want to animate the icon. We then need to pass a property name, which is view.scaleX. That is what we want to animate. And now the values. So from which value we want to animate to which. We're animating from 0.4f. That is the to value that we chose here in our logo animator. This one here. So this is now the initial value. And we want to animate this out. So to 0.0f. Then we can also say zoomx. Zoomx.interpolator is an overshoot interpolator. In code, that's pretty easy to set, but I'll also show you how I can set that for the XML animation. We can define a duration, which I'll just set to 500 milliseconds. And we can then say do on end. So when the animation ends, then we want to say screen.remove. So that means if the animation finished, then we also hide and disable our splash screen. And now we just need the same for zooming out the Y value. So just copy paste this, replace scale X with scale Y. These are the same, just make sure we also replace this with zoom Y, zoom Y, zoom Y. And last but not least, we need to start both these animations. Zoom X start and zoom Y start. There we go. If we now launch this and take a look here, then it's animating in. And after that, it's animating out. You can see it zoomed out and it then shows our real app. Last but not least, let's take a look how we can add an interpolator for the XML logo. That's also super easy. We just go to RAS and define that interpolator in XML. New Android resource file, call that overshoot interpolator. And we make sure that we put this inside the animation resource folder. And the root element is an overshoot interpolator. Okay, and this can just remain empty. We just need something to refer to in our logo animator. I think it's here. Yes. Below this duration block, we set the interpolator to our overshoot interpolator. It might even be that Android already has such an interpolator. At Android, no. Let's just keep our interpolator here. If we then launch this, take a look. You can see there was a little interpolator animation. The logo rotated a little bit more than 360 degrees and then rotated back to 360 degrees. Let's have it again. There we go. A little bit overshoot animation. Looks pretty cool in my opinion. Awesome. If you want to apply these concepts that I teach in my videos in a real world app, while having an experienced Android developer look over what you're doing and correcting you if you're making any mistakes, then definitely check out my 10-week Android mentorship program. First link in this video's description. Other than that, thanks for watching this video. I will see you back in the next one. Have an amazing rest of your week. Bye-bye.